Today, we're reviewing a zombie movie that proves one terrifying thing. Elementary school kids are way scarier than actual zombies. The movie is Cooties, a 2014 horror comedy directed by Jonathan Milott and Carrie Murnian, starring Elijah Wood, Rainn Wilson, Allison Pill, and a classroom full of tiny rage monsters. And yes, the zombies in this movie are children, which means the adults are fighting off undead fourth graders with rulers, dodgeballs, and whatever else they can grab before snack time. The movie starts in the most ridiculous way possible at a chicken processing plant, because apparently every horror movie virus begins with something involving questionable meat. A worker accidentally contaminates a batch of chicken nuggets with some mysterious virus. The chicken gets packaged, shipped out, and where does it end up? An elementary school cafeteria. Of course it does. Meanwhile, we meet our main character Clint Hadson, played by Elijah Wood. Clint is a struggling writer who returns to his hometown to work as a substitute teacher. Right away you can tell Clint is awkward, uncomfortable, and probably regrets every life decision that brought him back to an elementary school. His former crush Lucy, played by Allison Pill, is one of the teachers there. She's nice, optimistic, and clearly questioning why she didn't move somewhere better. Then we meet the real star of the adult cast, gym teacher Wade Johnson, played by Rainn Wilson. Wade is basically if a PE teacher drank 6 energy drinks and then tried to teach dodgeball like it was a military operation. He's loud, obnoxious, and completely convinced he's the smartest guy in the room, which immediately makes him the funniest character in the movie. But before we can get comfortable with the staff, lunchtime rolls around, and one unlucky kid eats a contaminated chicken nugget, and that's when things get weird. Very weird. The kid suddenly becomes pale, twitchy, and starts acting like he just discovered caffeine for the first time. Then the biting starts. And just like that, the school turns into ground zero for the weirdest zombie outbreak ever filmed. But here's the twist: the virus only infects children. Adults are immune, which means the teachers suddenly find themselves trapped in a school surrounded by zombie kids. If that sounds ridiculous, just wait. It gets way crazier. Once the infection spreads, the movie goes completely off the rails in the best possible way. Kids start attacking teachers. Teachers start barricading doors. And suddenly the entire faculty realizes they are in a life or death battle against third graders. One of the funniest parts of this movie is watching adults try to fight zombie children without looking like complete monsters. Because, yes, they have to defend themselves. But also, you can't exactly dropkick a fourth grader without feeling a little guilty. Well, most of them can't. Wade the gym teacher absolutely can. Rainn Wilson steals almost every scene he's in because his character treats the zombie outbreak like the ultimate dodgeball tournament. At one point, he literally says something along the lines of, "This is survival of the fittest." Meanwhile, Clint is still trying to process the fact that the kids he was supposed to teach are now trying to eat him. The teachers start forming a survival group that includes Lucy the caring teacher, Wade the hyper-aggressive gym coach, a socially awkward science teacher, a super stressed vice principal, and Clint, the substitute teacher who clearly didn't sign up for any of this. Together they try to escape the school while the infected kids swarm the halls. And the movie does something really smart here. It balances horror and comedy perfectly. The zombie kids are actually creepy, like genuinely creepy. They run fast, they scream, they bite, and they travel in packs. So while the movie is funny, the danger still feels real. There are scenes where the teachers are hiding in classrooms while dozens of infected kids pound on the doors. And then 5 minutes later, someone gets taken out by a playground swing. That's the kind of tone this movie runs on. Chaotic horror comedy. But the best part of the movie is easily the dialogue. The characters constantly argue, panic, and insult each other while trying to survive. At one point, the adults debate whether it's morally acceptable to attack zombie children. And Wade basically responds with something like, they're not children anymore, they're tiny psychopaths. Which honestly sums up the movie perfectly. Eventually, the teachers realize the infection is spreading through the school faster than they expected. And if they don't escape soon, they're going to become lunch. Literally. The final act of Cooties turns the chaos all the way up. The teachers attempt a full escape from the school while being chased by an entire army of infected kids. And this is where the movie really embraces its ridiculous premise. We're talking about full-on zombie survival tactics inside an elementary school. Desks become barricades. Baseball bats become weapons. And gym equipment becomes the last line of defense against a horde of undead fifth graders. There are moments in this movie that feel like a parody of every zombie film ever made, but somehow it still works. Partly because the cast completely commits to the insanity. Elijah Wood plays the reluctant hero surprisingly well. He starts the movie as the quiet, awkward substitute teacher, and slowly transforms into someone willing to fight off a hallway full of infected children. Alison Pill brings a lot of heart to the movie as Lucy, the one character still trying to believe there's a way to save the kids. And then there's Rainn Wilson, who spends the entire movie acting like he's starring in the world's most intense dodgeball championship. He's aggressive, he's loud, and he treats every zombie kid like they just challenged him to a PE duel. Honestly, half the comedy comes from watching him take this situation way too seriously. Visually, the movie also does a great job with practical effects. The infected kids look gross. Their skin turns pale and blotchy. Their behavior becomes feral. And when they attack, they go full zombie mode. But the movie never forgets that it's supposed to be fun. Even the gore is played for laughs half the time. By the time the final escape attempt happens, the movie has fully embraced its identity. It's ridiculous. It's chaotic. And it's exactly the kind of weird horror comedy you'd expect from a film called Cooties. So is it scary? Not really. But is it entertaining? Absolutely. If you enjoy zombie movies that don't take themselves too seriously, and you're okay with the idea of teachers fighting off infected elementary school kids, then Cooties is definitely worth checking out. It's weird, it's funny, and it's one of the few zombie movies where the real lesson might be never trust cafeteria chicken nuggets, because sometimes they bite back. Before we wrap up this review, let's talk about some fun behind-the-scenes facts about Cooties, because this movie actually has a pretty interesting story off camera. First up, the script was written by Lee Wannell and Ian Brennan. Lee Wannell is the same guy who helped create the Saw franchise and wrote Insidious. So yes, one of the minds behind some genuinely terrifying horror movies also helped write a film about zombie elementary school kids. That might explain why the infected children in Cooties are actually a little creepy despite the comedy tone. Another interesting detail is that the movie premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2014. Imagine being a film critic expecting an artsy independent drama, and instead watching teachers defend themselves against a horde of infected fourth graders. That must have been quite the screening. The casting also added a lot to the movie's personality. Elijah Wood had already played Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, but around this time he started diving into strange horror projects. Movies like Cooties helped cement his reputation for picking weird, unconventional films. Then there's Rainn Wilson, who most people know as Dwight Schrute from The Office. His character Wade basically feels like Dwight if he became a PE teacher and decided he was the tactical commander of the zombie apocalypse. A lot of his lines were reportedly improvised, which explains why his scenes feel so chaotic and funny. Filming the zombie kids was also a unique challenge. The production had to make the children look terrifying without actually scaring the young actors themselves. So most of the intense moments were filmed carefully using editing tricks, makeup, and clever camera angles. And speaking of makeup, the movie used a lot of practical effects instead of CGI. The infected kids were created with prosthetics and makeup, which is why they look oddly unsettling instead of cartoonish. Finally, the title itself is pretty clever. Every kid knows the playground term, Cooties, the imaginary disease you get from someone you don't want to touch. The movie basically took that childhood joke and turned it into a full-blown zombie outbreak, which might be the most ridiculous and perfect premise for a zombie comedy ever made.